Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of Babergh District Council. My name is Councillor Lee Parker. I am Vice Chair of Babergh District Council, but I'll be chairing this meeting this evening. This meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be recorded, except where there are confidential or exempt items. If any member of the public attending the meeting objects to being filmed, please advise us immediately, and we will ensure that they are not included in the filming. Members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. If you're intending to do so, please could you inform the committee clerk. May I please request that mobile phones are on silent or switched off and that your laptops are switched to silent. If you hear the fire alarm, please leave the building immediately via a fire exit and make your way to the assembly point at Ipswich Town Football Ground. So we'll move into the agenda, starting with item 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you very much, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Liz Malvisi, Councillor Brian Riley, Councillor Michael Holt and Councillor Tim Register.
Thank you very much. Item number 2, I will just say declarations of interest. The monitoring officer has granted dispensation to all members in respect of the budget, as is the norm. But do we have any declarations of interest by councillors for any other purpose? Councillor Carter.
I will declare that in regards to the HRA revenue account, I'm a council tenant.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Councillor Carter. That's grand. Item 3, paper BC 2535, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of January 2026. This is for accuracy only, but does anybody have any questions to ask around the accuracy of the papers? Excellent. In which case, could I ask for a proposer then for those minutes? Councillor Davis, thank you very much. And a seconder? Councillor Hurren, thank you very much. This is the only time we will do this evening, but we'll have a show of hands for that. So if we can put our hands to that, if we're all good to go. Excellent, and that is carried. Right, item number 4, Chair's announcements. Paper BC 2536, which is for noting. However, I will at this point invite Councillor Jameson to stand. I think you wish to say a few words, Councillor Jameson.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, during Councillor Potter's illness last year, he was unable to do any council parish work, casework, and I'd just like to thank Councillor Derek Davis for stepping in during that period and helping out cover Councillor Potter's estimate. That comes from the whole of the Green Group. We really appreciate your time and effort you put in there to support Daniel during his period when he couldn't work. So thank you very much.
Super job. Thank you, Councillor Jameson. And on to the leaders' announcements. I'll invite Councillor John Ward to present your update, which will be circulated following the meeting and attached to the minutes thereafter. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, National Grid. Earlier this month, there were public open hearings into National Grid's Norwich to Tilbury project. This is the first stage of the Planning Inspectorate's examination of this project. The hearing allowed initial statements from interested parties, and I was delighted to be able to give a verbal submission on behalf of Babergh on the 11th of February. We remain seriously concerned about the project's impact on the environment, our communities and businesses. The landscape of the district is highly valued, with national landscape designation, many cultural and historic associations, and sensitive views that contribute to the unique character of Babergh and the wider region. Views that have been immortalised by both Gainsborough and Constable. I made it clear that we believe these plans should be halted so alternative options, particularly an underground HVDC solution over the entire length of the project, can be properly considered and costed. There is still time for this to happen. Of course, grid reinforcement is necessary, and all options have impacts. Residents do understand that, but we have never had a proper national debate about the trade-offs between costs and impacts of all the new energy projects, and this is what is needed. Next, just a quick comment on the joint local plan and call for sites. There has been a lot of activity on Facebook groups in the past week concerning 2 sites that was submitted in the 2024 call for sites and which are now in the SLA. Disinformation, misunderstanding and scaremongering have caused quite a bit of panic. No doubt there will be much more chatter as we head into the publication of the updated list of sites soon and the new SLA in the spring. And it will be incumbent on all of us to ensure that incorrect comments are challenged robustly so that the public can have calm and informed conversations and debate. Local government reorganisation. Well, I had hoped that I would have little to say about this, as we were supposed to be in a waiting period until the government announced its decision on which option it preferred for Suffolk. However, as you all know, there has been a bit of a U-turn regarding elections that has up to a point interfered with LGR and also devolution. Councils were assured by the government that elections could be legally cancelled, but now it seems that the government has come to the opposite conclusion following legal advice. Whilst I'm sure that we all welcome this latest change, it is still a bit worrying. The big question now is, will there be a change in the LGR timetable? I don't expect there will be, as the government seems to be clear that things are on track still. The promise of an additional £63 million capacity funding for the 21 areas undergoing LGR, on top of the £7.6 million provided last year, is most welcome. But it has clearly not washed with Norfolk County Council, because as we all know now, the leader has withdrawn from both LGR and devolution, with a very public polemic attacking the Secretary of State, Steve Reed. I'll refrain from using her language in this chamber. Suffolk has said that a council vote to approve the devolution statutory instrument must wait for the new administration, which makes sense. So what is the impact for Suffolk? You may have read stories in the national media suggesting councils face an uphill struggle to be ready in time for elections in May. I want to make it absolutely clear this is not the case for Babergh and Mid-Suffolk District Councils or our colleagues elsewhere in Suffolk. Our electoral services teams have continued to work diligently to ensure that we are ready to administer the county council elections. Venues are booked and the vast majority of staff required are already appointed. Delivery of elections has always required a big corporate effort, but no more so than than usual. Suffolk LGR should go ahead, as it won't be impacted by Norfolk's decision, and actually Norfolk's probably will too, as it is a matter for the government now, not the council. But how will the government's choice between 1 or 3 councils in each county be affected? Devolution is a matter for both counties, but it is on hold anyway due to the postponement of the mayoral election until 2028. A new Norfolk administration will make its own decision. Can Norfolk County Council withdraw, or will the government impose change on it? Will Norfolk and Suffolk County Councils really want to be the only area without a combined authority? If so, what would be the impact on future investment and regional credibility? What would be the impact on the proposed transfer of Police and Crime Commissioner powers to the Mayor if we don't have one? Questions without answers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. So, do any members require any clarification of any points that Councillor Ward has raised there? They must be points of clarification rather than open questions. No? Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, so item number 5, petitions.
None received, Chair.
Excellent. Questions by the public?
Also none received.
That's wonderful. Questions by councillors?
Also none received.
Tremendous. Right, members, we'll get into the substantive items on the agenda now then, beginning with paper BC 2537, the 2026-27 General Fund Budget and Medium-Term Financial Position. And again, I'm going to invite Councillor John Ward to introduce the report and to move the recommendations in it, please. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to introduce report BC 2537, the 2026-27 General Fund Budget and Medium-Term Financial Position. Yet again, budget setting has proved to be a challenge, and this year is probably the most difficult we have faced. The government conducted the Fair Funding 2.0 consultation last summer and published the consultation response and the local government finance policy statement in November. The provisional finance settlement was published in December, and we received the final settlement earlier this month. We are getting the first 3-year settlement in many years, which is good, as is the move to simplifying the funding streams by merging many of the newer grants into the revenue support grant. However, the intention to allocate funding based on a revised and extended needs-based allocation has penalised rural areas. The built-in assumption in the provisional financial settlement that councils will raise their council tax rates by the full referendum limit has renewed calls for the system to be reformed. I know that some of you attended the all-member briefing on the provisional settlement and will have absorbed the details and our concerns about its impact on us over the medium-term period. Usually the final settlement more or less confirms the provisional settlement with no surprises. As with everything to do with government funding this year, things are different, and the final settlement was not quite what we were expecting. More on this later. Looking at the details of the budget summary is provided in Table 1 in paragraph 5.6 and the charts in the following paragraph, and these show the gross expenditure and gross income from all sources. After a lot of volatility in the numbers, we have finally got a balanced budget this year with a moderate surplus of £334,000. Gross expenditure is forecast to be 31.557 million, which is an increase of 1.09% on the current year, while gross income, including funding, is 31.895 million, an increase of 3.55%. Net expenditure, when grants and income are included, is forecast to be 14.591 million, a 3% decrease. And the net cost of service, after taking into account recharges, capital financing costs, and investment income, is 13.722 million, a 9.07% decrease. Babergh's funding will be 14.056 million, a decrease of 2.8% from this year. Section 6 of the report details the assumptions we've made around the expenditure budget items. The largest of these is, of course, our staff budget. Even with the pay award and incremental salary increases, we still have a small reduction in the salaries budget, and most other employee cost items have remained nearly as before. But there is a reduction of more than £1 million in the total employee costs budget, almost entirely due to the 3-year yearly revaluation of the pension fund that has enabled us to reduce the contribution rate from 26 to 16.4%, saving £859,000. The sharing of staff costs in the Memorandum of Understanding with Mid-Suffolk has been revisited to reflect the time staff will be devoting to each council, and this will give us a saving of £249,000. Other expenditure items include a decrease in premises, supplies and services, a large increase in measure contracts due to the new agency model for Abbeycroft Leisure and the new food waste contract, and a small decrease in capital financing charges. There is an increase of £1.1 million in grants and contributions, almost entirely due to the extended producer responsibility grant, and this will be needed to cover the increased revenue costs of implementing better recycling. Section 7 of the report details the assumptions we've made around the income budget items. New fees and charges were approved by Cabinet in November, and the forecast total is a large increase compared with this year, and some of this is due to increased income from car parking, planning and the garden waste service, but the largest difference is that we now include the income from the leisure centres. Investment income is shown in Table 10, and I can confirm that we have now sold the Schroeder Fund, referred to in paragraph 7.7, realising a small profit. Section 9 of the report lists the pressures on the budget and the changes from this year and the savings that have been found. A sterling effort by the senior leadership team and the service heads has resulted in an impressive net £2.1 million of savings and additional income, excluding waste services. When the changes to the waste services are taken into account, the net cost of services has been reduced by 1.368 million. The cost of the new food waste collection service is included here, but the new burdens funding is included in the revenue support grant. The extended producer responsibility funding is also listed here. Moving on to the finance settlement and funding. As promised, we have a 3-year finance settlement based on a new assessment of needs to reform the distribution of funding affecting grants and the local share of business rates. This has, as expected, reduced our funding considerably. The methodology of distributing funds has changed so significantly that, Along with simplification of funding streams and consolidation of grants, a like-for-like comparison with previous years is not possible. Before I explain more about the settlement and its impact on us, I'll just cover the council tax and business rate forecasts in the budget. Details of the new council tax rates are given in paragraphs 8.21 to 8.24, and we are, as usual, proposing a 2.99% increase in council tax, the maximum permitted without holding a referendum. This is necessary and assumed by the government. The Revenue Support Grant Resource Adjustment assumes this, and it is part of the overall calculation of core spending power. It will mean a rise of £5.79 to £199.52 per annum for a Band D property, generating an additional £215,000. A further £61,000 will be generated by an expected 0.86% increase in the tax base. We will also have to collect the new high-value council tax surcharge for government, and details of the changes to the local council tax reduction scheme are provided in paragraph 8.25. The recently announced business rates changes are listed in paragraph 8.26 to 8.32. There will be a business rates reset, removing the growth that has built up over the past years, and new needs assessments for baselines, tariffs, and top-ups. There will be changes to the rateable values and multipliers, levy rates on future growth, and the changes to the Section 31 grants. There will be a new retail, hospitality and leisure multipliers, replacing the current RHL relief, and other changes are listed in the report. Suffolk has decided not to pool this year, as the business rate changes will reduce the benefits of pooling to the extent that the costs will outweigh the benefits. The overall impact of all these changes is a forecast reduction in business rates income from about £6 million this year to just £2.662 million next year. Now back to the settlement. As those of you who attended the all-member briefing will remember, the provisional settlement had assessed our 2025-26, that is current year, core spending power at £14.355 million, and provided 100% transitional protection to protect that over the following 3 years of the settlement. However, following feedback, the government was advised that there were incorrect assumptions about the distribution of business rates revenues for councils in business rate pools. In an explanatory note, the government said that a technical adjustment will move money between councils in an area towards councils responsible for social care, which is in line with the overall objective to get funding to where it is needed most. This means, in effect, a transfer from the Suffolk districts to the county council. For Babergh, it means that our core spending power for this year was overstated by £432,000. Consequently, our RSG funding has been reduced in 2026 and 27 and 2027 to 28, and the promised transitional protection has been removed entirely. Having realised this would have caused councils' budget setting difficulties due to the lateness of this correction, the government has provided a one-off adjustment support grant in 2026 to 27, so the real effect won't be seen until the following 2 years. Table 11 shows the grants we will now get following the final settlement. 18 funding streams have now been consolidated into Revenue Support Grant, and it is now the sole source of grants for Babergh. Our allocation is larger than previous years, but it does include the Food Waste New Burdens Funding, New Homes Bonus, and National Insurance grants. However, this must be seen in the context of the huge reduction in business rates I have mentioned. Not just the baseline funding level reset, but the overall total we will be getting this year. The new RST allocations will be phased in gradually over the settlement period. Table 12 shows how our core spending power would change over the 3 years of the settlement. Less than the £14.355 million each year that we were expecting from the provisional settlement. In summary, the effects of Babergh are a £432,000 reduction in our core spending power for the current year, as I've mentioned. RSG has been cut by £294,000 in 2026 to 27, by another £148,000 in 2027 to 28. Our transitional protection has been removed, as I've said, a loss of £831,000. The gradually reducing over the 3 years of the settlement, instead of it being stable, but higher than the newly reduced core spending power for 2025 to 26. An additional £118,000, however, has been provided for homelessness funding in each of the 3 years of the settlement, to be ring-fenced in a reserve, so we haven't included it in the overall MTFP. And the total impact over the 3 years is a reduction in funding from the provisional to the final settlement of £717,000. That's including the homelessness grant. An increase of £422,000 in the MTFP deficit for 2027 to 28, and another £412,000 for 28 to 29. And so our reserves will now go negative a year earlier. I know we didn't expect a pleasant surprise, but neither we could have expected this. It's not good. And there is a further depressing footnote to all of this. As explained in paragraphs 8.19 and 8.20, the government has overestimated our council tax funding, and our actual core spending power will be £700,000 less over the next 3 years. The forecast position for the MUP reserves is shown in Appendix C, and the position over the next few years shows our reserves depleting to the point of being negative at the end of 2029 to 30. And this is not something that can occur in reality, but indicates that we will not have sufficient reserves to fund future budget gaps. Section 11 shows the forecasts for the MTFP period up until 2030 to 31. Although the current timetable for LGR has the establishment of new Suffolk unitary or unitaries in 2028, the process is still in its early stages, and given the experience of the past few months, anything can happen, so we will continue to plan on a 5-year horizon. Table 16 shows the costs and demands for the council services continuing to outstrip the resources available to fund them, with increasing forecast deficits each year. Gross expenditure is forecast to increase by 4.508 million, which is 14.28%, but income is forecast to increase by only 1.116 million, which is 3.5%, giving a forecast cumulative shortfall of just under £10 million. This is an unsustainable situation, and significant savings and or increases in income will need to be identified in the years to come before the Financial Resilience Reserve is exhausted. The other uncertainty facing us is that the implementation of LGR has transition costs, currently unknown, that we will have to bear. We will use reserves and collaborate with our colleagues around the county, and of course there is that additional funding promised by government. But reserves must be maintained at a level that gives us sufficient resilience, and so we will also ask the government for permission to use capital receipts to manage some LGR costs, service transformation costs, and further efficiency improvements. Appendix E outlines the government's statutory guidance on the flexible use of capital receipts in the next financial year to fund revenue spending that will generate savings on net service expenditure. A summary of the capital programme is shown in section 12 with a detail in Appendix D. We have a much reduced budget of £6.6 million with savings in interest and MRP charges due to reduced borrowing. The main schemes are listed in paragraph 12.1. And finally, Appendix F contains the Section 25 report, which is the 151 officer's assessment of the budget. It is an important document, but I recommend particularly reading the section on the SIPFA Financial Resilience Index and the assessment of our financial stress indicators. Paragraphs 2.12 and 2.13 are interesting. The proportion of expenditure covered by fees and charges and council tax are low in comparison with other councils. So in summary, it's extremely frustrating that in spite of all the good work we do to make efficiency improvements and change the way we deliver our services, successive governments have constantly put financial obstacles in our way. There are political decisions, some difficult, that this administration has made in deciding where savings must be made and where additional income can be found. Many efficiencies have been made over recent years, and it is increasingly difficult to find more. We must, however, have one eye on the LGR future and not act irresponsibly, do anything that would harm a successor council. This budget will still enable us to deliver our commitments we have made, particularly to Sudbury, where we have included additional capital provision to enable the Bellevue Park Cafe to finally be built, and also to carry out urgent maintenance work to ensure that the Kingfisher Leisure Centre remains open. This budget is a sensible balance of the use of some reserves, some reduction in services, and some increases in fees and charges. But it is important that we still provide the services, many discretionary, that our residents, particularly the most vulnerable, value and rely on, and which make real differences for them. Local government is about more than just doing the statutory stuff, emptying the bins, planning, licensing, and we still need to do as much as we can. And finally, I'd like to thank Melissa, David and the team for preparing this budget, and I know it's not been easy for them. I'd like now to propose the recommendations in section 3 of the report, that Council approves recommendations 3.1 to 3.6 and notes recommendations 3.7 and 3.8. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ward, for that most fulsome introduction this afternoon. We will, of course, require a seconder to that. Councillor Saw, thank you very much. Would you like to speak now, Councillor Saw, or do you want to reserve your right to speak later?
Thank you, Chair. I'll reserve my right to speak later.
Super job. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, members. So you've heard the introduction there. I will now invite questions from the floor, but I'll remind you that they must be questions. We'll save any expansive conversation for the debate. So who would like to start us off, please? Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Chair. On page 27, we see that there is a change in the model used with Abbeycroft Leisure, and the expenditure for Babergh goes up considerably. Is that change of contract going to impact our relationship with Abbeycroft Leisure? Thank you.
No, Councillor McLaren, it's something we have agreed with Abbeycroft Leisure. It's all to do with recovery of VAT. We as a council can recover VAT on leisure services, Abbeycroft can't. So we're moving to a new agency model where we'll be responsible for that and the income that comes in from the leisure centres. And we'll be reimbursing Abbeycroft accordingly.
Thank you, Chair.
Welcome. I'm looking around the room for anybody else that might have some questions at this stage. Okay, councillors. It's a very important subject, but if you are content that you've no further questions, we'll head straight into debate then, in that case. Would anybody like to kick off with the debate? Crumbs. Councillor Saw, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think this was a very, very difficult budget to put together. In fact, I know that our finance director said it was probably the most difficult that she had done in her whole career because there were the deck chairs were moving on the Titanic very rapidly. I think that calling this, the government calling this a fair funding is a total misnomer. Rural councils will actually suffer and be impacted much more than urban councils. As we know, our rural delivery grant was removed last year. We lost £308,000. We felt at one point that it was coming back, but then we realised it was only coming back for county as regards adult social care. Of course, there are several of our services which are delivered over a very wide geographical area. I'm thinking obviously of our waste and recycling, but we will receive no money for that. Rural residents will pay 17% more in council tax per head compared to urban residents in the next tax year. Urban councils will receive 32% more per head than rural councils. By 2028-29, urban councils will have seen a 20% increase in government-funded spending power compared to only 2% in rural areas. You will have all read today that dozens of councils were granted exceptional financial support by the government. This is a trend that will only continue and is actually designed to be temporary. But will it be temporary? I fear not. And I fear that we are not alone in being challenged by this settlement. But we will do all that we can to ensure, as we have done for the last 15 years of cuts, to ensure that we continue to provide services to our residents that they need and require. As I said, I regard the phrase fair funding as total sophistry. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Saw. Would anybody else like to add to the debate at this point? No? In which case we will go to the vote. Now, I do need to remind members that in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 19.3, immediately after any vote is taken at a budget decision meeting of the Council, the names of the councillors who cast a vote for the decision or against the decision, or who abstained from voting shall be recorded in the minutes of that meeting. I shall now ask the Head of Democratic Services to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you kindly, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Councillor Beer, can I take your vote verbally? Against. Councillor Rowling, can I take your vote verbally? Help is on the way. Thank you for your patience, councillors. That is 21 votes for, 6 against and 1 abstention. That motion is carried.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. We will move to item 9 on the agenda, the Housing Revenue Account 2026-27 budget and the 30-year business plan paper BC 2538. Once again, I will invite Councillor John Ward to introduce the report and to move the recommendations therein. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I wasn't expecting that to be so quick. I'm pleased to introduce report BC 2538, the 2026-27 Housing Revenue Account Budget and 30-year Business Plan. The Social Housing Regulation Act 2023 introduced a new regulatory framework which, along with its emphasis on resident engagement and the need to adhere to the consumer standards and decent home standard, was meant to rethink of how we deliver services to our tenants and a review of the business plan to ensure that it can finance our obligations. More legislation is expected soon. The business plan has also had to accommodate other challenges, including restrictions on rent setting, as explained in paragraphs 4.5 to 4.10. To aid compliance with regulations, in 2024 we decided to conduct a full stock condition survey. I just want to clarify the current position of that survey. It hasn't yet been completed, as stated in paragraph 4.5, which should actually say that 89.5% of our homes had a full stock condition survey completed last year, and the works arising from these surveys have been integrated into the HRA business plan. We now have a follow-up programme underway to complete the remaining 10.5% of surveys by the end of June, and works arising from these will be integrated into the HRA business plan later this year. Looking at the budget, the draft budget shows a deficit of £8.855 million compared with the current year's budget deficit of £8.353 million. The pressures and savings contributing to this are shown in Table 1 in paragraph 4.15. Table 2 in paragraph 4.16 shows the budget summary comparing 2026 to 27 with the 2025 to 26 budget and also the Q2 forecast. Income has increased by 1.275 million to 23.882 million, and expenditure has decreased by 1.014 million to 18.834 million, leaving us with an operating surplus of £5.048 million. The reasons for the forecast deficit can be seen in the financing section, primarily the large revenue contribution to capital to finance our capital programme. Due to a reduction in the current year's capital programme, most of what was in the budget for the current year will now be carried forward to 2026 to 27. Table 5 in paragraph 4.19 lists the assumptions that have gone into the preparation of the budget. These include proposed rent, service charge and utility charge increases. The average two-bed social rent will increase by £5.50 a week from £114.66 to £120.17, and by an average of £7.90 from £164.51 to £172.41 for affordable rent. A one-off rent tolerance uplift of 10% on target rent will be applied when a sheltered property is re-let. Table 6 in paragraph 4.26 provides a breakdown of the staffing costs, showing the totals, savings and pressures for each service area. In paragraphs 4.22 to 4.25 explain the approach to reviewing service charges for sheltered accommodation. As last year, we will be reviewing the provision and costs, aiming for full cost recovery in 4 years. The reserves are shown in table 7 in paragraph 4.30, and after deducting the forecast budget deficit, there will be just over £4.2 million in the reserves. But as we have seen this year, this does depend on the capital programme being delivered on time and the need for the revenue contribution to capital. The proposed capital programme for 2026 to 27 and the next 2 years is shown in table 8, and it shows a reduction over the next 3 years, mainly due to the completion of the decarbonisation work and the upland site development. There are a number of movements from the 2025 to 26 budget, the largest being due to the delay in delivery of roofing repairs, the review of the environmental projects, and the revised capital provision for the uplands development, and no forecast new builds and acquisitions. This will be financed primarily by the large revenue contribution to capital, which I've already mentioned. And this will help with the affordability of the capital programme, as we will not need to borrow this year and incur the associated costs of borrowing. As a result of the government's reduction in the discount, we are expecting a decrease in the number of right-to-buy sales in future, although we do have a spike in completions this year. The government has also increased the flexibility of how we can use right-to-buy receipts, as detailed in paragraph 4.38, which is very welcome. A brief history of rent setting since 2002 is provided in section 5 of the report, and this covers the introduction of formula rent, past rent convergence, rent tolerance, and the rent reductions and caps we have had to suffer. We agreed, as Council, agreed the HRA 30-year business plan last month, and the assumptions used in modelling the business plan are included in paragraph 6.1. The plan will be reviewed at least annually. The plan that Council approved last month included the effect of the new rent convergence that will start soon. However, we had modelled a £2 a week convergence from the start of 27-28, but the government decided recently to set it at £1 for the first year, rising to £2 from the second year onwards. Details of this are provided in paragraph 6.2 to 6.4. The plan attached as Appendix A today shows the impact of that revised convergence. It is minimal. There is an adverse movement in 2027 to 28 of £142,000 on gross rent, and there is a little bit more additional borrowing which will be paid off over 5 instead of 4 years, and annual surplus is slightly down, reaching 62.8 million in year 30 and not the 65.2 million reported last month. Overall, the plan remains sustainable. In summary, we do have ongoing financial challenges because of the sheer number of damp, mould and roofing works that are still to be done. But as you've seen last month, there has been a marked improvement in the HRA. The business plan is showing a much better forecast for the 30 years, and it has a robust strategy to finance the work needed to improve and maintain stock quality so that revenue spend on repairs and reactive maintenance can be reduced. Now, we know that Deborah left us with a great legacy, a healthy HRA, along with a robust programme of stock improvement to meet the needs of new legislation and regulatory compliance. There's still much to be done to address the backlog of works, but we are now in a much better place to get this done. And we now have Mandy Babergh on board, and she is taking all this forward for us. And finally, I'd like to thank Melissa, David, we've got Jenny as well here today, for preparing this budget and also the updated HRA business plan. So I'd like to propose the recommendations in paragraph 3 that Council approves recommendations 3.1 to 3.7, although there's going to be a slight change to 3.4, and it should say that sheltered housing service charges and utility charges will be increased over 4 years to claim and recover the full costs, and this means an equivalent This means an increase of 98 pence per week for the service charge, 37 pence per week for heating, £1.27 per week for water. It's only a slight change in the wording, but just to clarify what that one means. That's it. Thank you, Chair.
Super job. Thank you very much again, Councillor Ward. So I will require a seconder for that, Councillor Hendry. Thank you very much. And would you like to reserve your right to speak for later, Councillor Hendry, as well? Yeah, excellent. Okay, in which case we will get into questions again. And again, they must be questions at this point. Who would like to start off, please? Councillor Mabry.
Let's try that one. Thank you, Chair, and welcome to the big chair, as they say. My question on the HRA is, and this is following on from last month when I still haven't had an answer from the Cabinet member for housing, on something else. The sheltered housing element that has been removed in Lavenham and in other places, will the residents in those properties actually see a reduction in their rent per week because they haven't got the sheltered housing aspect anymore? Thank you.
Mandy, Jenny, can you clarify that, please?
Thank you, Councillor Ward. The rent will still remain the same, but it will be the service charge that will be amended.
Councillor McLaren? Sorry, beg your pardon. Sorry, Councillor Mabry.
It's all right, Councillor. Lots of people call me Mary, and I don't know why. Thank you for that, and welcome again. I have already written to you, Mandeep. This really worries me because the sheltered housing tenants have lost certain aspects of their sheltered housing. They don't have a warden anymore. I've managed to keep the washroom, as they like to call it, which is where the washing machine is. It's a laundry room. We've managed to keep the communal area, which they use a lot. However, they have lost certain other aspects. So why are they not getting a rent reduction rather than a rent increase? And if you cannot answer this now, perhaps I can have a written reply within 7 days, please.
The rental calculation is the same as that for general needs tenants, so they're not paying any more for their rent than if they were in a general property which didn't have a warden service. All of those services which you've just listed form part of the service charge rather than part of the rent, which is why their service charge will be reduced accordingly.
And Councillor, sorry, if I can just come in on that. The services that have been removed were all consulted upon, and I think that was shared at the last meeting as well. So residents have been consulted upon those services that have either been removed or kept.
As long as it's a question, Councillor Mabry, please.
Now, I need to know, because I know I will be asked tomorrow by the residents, particularly in Lavenham, who I represent, in the housing sheltered, what was the housing sheltered area. So their rents are going to stay the same, right? So they're not going to have an increase. Are they going to have an increase? They are going to still have an increase. But their service charges, they're going to have a decrease on that, are they? Because if I can't understand it, how can I explain it to the residents?
Sorry. With regards to the service charges, we're not fully charging all service charges at the moment, which is where we're spreading the costs over what was 5 years, now 4 years, to fully recover those costs. But they should see some reduction in service charges, but what they won't see is that increase that everybody else in sheltered will have over the next 4 years.
I'm going to come back. Thank you. Chairman, because this is really important. We have an ageing population. We have the highest ageing demographic in Lavenham. I need to support them, and I need to make
Understood,
sure that
Councillor
Babergh
Mowbray,
is
but
doing
we
the
do
right
need
thing.
we need a question.
The question is, you are telling me that they're not going to be disadvantaged and that they will see a reduction in their service charges.
Each service charge is individually calculated according to that scheme's cost. So I can't comment on individual schemes without looking into that particular scheme, whether or not that scheme is fully recovering its costs at the moment. If the scheme was fully recovering its costs, then they would indeed see a reduction as we reduce those services. What they will be paying my service charge on is purely on what they're receiving, not on additional warden charges, etc.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for those answers. I've got Councillor McLaren, and then I think Councillor Davis. Councillor Davis. Indication you might like to speak.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor McLaren. Thank you.
On page 116, I note that there's a reduction in the right to buys, reduced to 6p a year until 2037-38. Can I ask, do we make that information public to all those people who were affected by that decision? Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, John.
I assume so. When if they're applying for the right to buy, then they'll know the order. Sorry. Jenny, I think if you can clarify that, yeah.
It's not that that's a minimum, that's just our estimate, given that the discount has reduced. We're assuming that there'll be a drop along with that.
Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Okay. Any other members wishing to ask any questions at this stage? Councillor Potter.
We'll just get that closer to it. I think that will be fine to be hearing. On 112 table 8, you've got central heating and the budget increase there, and the forecasts are very encouraging. They're good. But the question is, what involves the increase in budget? Is it the warm homes discount? Is it the rise in energy costs? Can sort of clarification would be needed on that? If you can provide it, that would be great. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Potter. Can you repeat that? I didn't quite get all of that.
So, table 8 on the HRA capital programme, page 112 on central heating, 2026, 27 and going forward. The budget on there is very good, obviously, from the forecasting beforehand from Q2. So I'm just saying, is there a relationship between our warm homes discount and what we imply there, or is it energy costs in general? So that was my question.
I think this is just to do with repairs, maintenance and replacement of central heating, isn't it? There's nothing more than that. And it's just the forecast we put in, given what we know about the stock condition and what work will need to be done on central heating over the next few years.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Saul.
Thank you, Chair. I represent a ward that has the highest proportion of oil-fired central heating in our properties, and I recognise that we have been successful in getting decarbonisation funding in the past, although I believe it is coming to an end. So I would like to ask what plans we might have to ensure that our residents who still have oil-fired central heating can move to air source heat pumps over the time of this budget.
That's very much a housing related issue rather than budget. So I was wondering, Councillor Hendry, do Are you able to answer that, or should I pass it over to Mandy?
Could you pass it to Mandy?
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. If I can take that one away, we are still applying for, sorry, Councillor Saul, we are still applying for more funding. I learnt that we have a handful of properties that still depend on oil, and there's various other kind of considerations. We also need to triangulate and then understand how reprogramming works to bring them up to in alignment with our decent home standards as well. So if that's okay, I'll take that one away.
Yeah, fine, thank you.
Super job, thank you very much. Councillors, any other questions? No? Okay, in which case we will move to debate. I will remind you, you can speak once for 3 minutes. Who would like to start the debate, please? Nobody wants to contribute to the debate at this point, in which case I will move straight on to the vote. Unless Councillor Hendry, would you like to speak? Seconder.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would just like to come back to Margaret, to Councillor Maybury, sorry, if I may. I just wanted to explain that with the service charges, we're very aware of the costs on our sheltered housing tenants. One of the reasons that we consider the decommissioning is because the service charge is becoming greater and greater, because it's costing us more and more money to provide those services, and it's not something that we can keep subsidising. Now, when we looked at it, a lot of the services that are provided by Babergh as part of that service charge, the tenants can actually source cheaper elsewhere, like the warden services. There's companies that are set up that are much more capable of doing that than we are, that can do it much cheaper. And one of the reasons for us looking at decommissioning those units was to save those tenants money. I apologise for not getting back to you. I will make sure I email you about that. But that's just to put your mind at rest. We are trying to consider the tenants when we're looking at that. Overall, I think this is a really positive HRA. We've got a massive job ahead of us. We've got the percentage of non-decent homes, is far greater than we expected it to be. It's great that we actually got a capital programme together that's actually going to address some of these issues to make sure that our homes are fit for purpose and going into the future. I take on board Councillor Sewell's comment as well. There's a lot of work going on to see how we can address those issues. But I think that this HRA report means that we can start to tackle some of the issues that we know we've got. But we have still got a lot of way to go. But thank you.
No, thank you, Councillor Hendry. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so final ask. Anybody else want to add to the debate at this point? If not, I will move to the vote in that case, and I will remind members again that because this is a budget decision, the vote will be recorded. But I will now ask the Head of Democratic Services to conduct the electronic vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Councillor Beer, can I take your vote verbally, please? Against. Councillor Osborne, would you like to provide your vote verbally? Or have you just done it? Just done it? That is 23 votes for, 5 against. That motion is carried.
Super job. Thanks, members. Item number 10, the Joint Capital Investment and Treasury Management Strategies 2026-27. Paper BC 2539, and I'm now going to invite Councillor Bryn Hurren to introduce the report and to move the recommendations therein. Councillor Hurren.
Thank you. Chairman, congratulations as well. My introduction will be quite brief, and it's a pleasure to bring us a forward-looking paper for once from JASC. The purposes of this paper is to present the annual approval for the capital investment and Treasury management strategy for 26-27. This report contains prudential indicators, minimum revenue policy, and ensures compliance with SIPRA code and government guidance. The capital programme for 26-7 has been referenced in the general fund budget, which we've just been dealing with, and totals 6.6 million. Similarly, the HRA budget, which was referenced earlier, is just over 14 million. Due to low available reserves, Babergh must borrow for future capital expenditure, creating an MRP charge of just over 2 million. The capital programme itself will be funded by a mix of capital receipts, grants, Section 106 and SIL monies, and also borrowing again. Forecast borrowing for the year ending 31st of March 27 is £131 million against 183 for the CFR budget. There is positive headroom between the borrowing forecast and the financial cost. The strategy remains compliant across the medium-term financial position for ratio of debt to authorised limit. The borrowing strategy for 26-27 will continue to utilise cheaper short-term borrowing. With our investments, I'm thrilled to report that the Schroeder Fund, which has been quite controversial because it a tiny element of fossil fuel investment, only about 3 to 5%, and I'm aware that Mid-Suffolk cashed those in early, whereas I asked for a separate vote and had the chairman's casting vote on a 2-2 score draw to keep it for a little while longer, to get back our money and hopefully make a small profit. Well, I'm pleased to announce that earlier this month, David told me that it had broke even and we hung on to it a bit longer, and it's now made £39,000. So we've made, not only have we got our money back and it's achieved a lot of interest in the years of investment, we've also earned a bit as well, which will go into general fund to save our borrowings and cut down on the interest we pay on other things. So it's a double win, Chairman. So I'm pleased to report that. Probably not so happy to report that Babergh growth continues to be a little bit of a millstone around us, with an estimated 3 million loss, which we will continue to work with, and we have got to have a strategy to pay it back over an increased number of years, so that is not so good. Our key risks, we're very good at risks now, aren't we? We have our whiz lady who puts risks into everything, and she's given us training at JASC, and we're getting to understand it, and I'm even beginning to quite love it now, because everything is a balance, isn't it? If you stick out your neck too far, it's more risk. I tend to be fairly careful with other people's money, not so careful with my own sometimes. I don't mind the odd risk in the business, but I feel we shouldn't be that with the public's money. Yes, it's generally the general fund sustainability. Our high borrowing is a worry, but it's where we are at the moment. This will be regularly monitored. We'll have cabinet oversight, and we do, through Arling Close, access ourselves to good advice, and we probably might be needing it. As our purpose here tonight, we're moving all the resolutions, apart from there's one for Mid-Suffolk and there's one just for noting. So we're looking for approval of Appendix A, B, C, D, as on your papers, and also F and G. and that's moving forward, Chairman. Yeah, tremendous thanks to the officers, and we have noticed the difference that we've got new officers now. We've been reinforced, both on the the finance side. We're a bit light on the general audit things, but that's the territory we're in. But yeah, they formed a great team, and I'm grateful to have them around me. And they're here tonight to answer the technical questions. And also, in my time as chairman, the committee itself has changed totally. It's a lot stronger. We have some really good members with financial experience and audit experience, which has been brilliant. I've got experience of making furniture, but quite a good experience of running a business, as I have uninterrupted for just over 50 years. But I did start when I was 16. So please do present it and propose it, and look for a seconder, Chairman. I can answer some of the questions. If they're too technical, I shall call on the staff here tonight. So thank you, everybody.
Well done, Councillor Harron. Thank you for that introduction. So I will call for a seconder, Councillor McLaren. Thank you very much indeed. And we will open up the item for questions. Must be questions, councillors. Anybody? Councillor Mabry.
It is always a question, Chair. Thank you. My question actually is what are we actually voting for on the recommendations? Is there just one in this paperwork? This is easier for me to read than bending down there. Is it just 3.4, which is mid-Suffolk only, that we're ignoring? Or is it everything after 3.4 that we're ignoring? So could someone actually tell us what points we are voting for and what the numbers will be? Thank you.
Perfectly reasonable question, Councillor. Are you happy to answer that, Councillor Harron?
Yes, I did. On your papers, Councillor Mabry, it's Appendix A, B, C, D, F and G. We're missing out the mid-Suffolk pertaining one, and the one at the end is for noting. So I'm looking to propose at second all the rest as on the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor
There's
Harron.
one which is marked mid-Suffolk and one just for noting, so it's everything else, Councillor Mabry.
Thank you, and I'm just going to ask Peter to just clarify that as well, Councillor Harron.
Yep,
thank you.
Fine. Yeah, very happy to, Chair. To clarify, it's to agree recommendations 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, 3.5, 3.6, 3.7 and 3.8 as detailed in report BC 2539.
All right. Please, members, questions? Okay, in which case, if there's no questions, we'll head straight into debate. You each have 3 minutes. Councillor Mabry, you just about got it under the wire. Go on. Question?
Chairman, I'm very sorry. I'm ahead of myself. It's for the next paper. Thank you. Sorry, that's
For the next paper? Right, okay, all right. In which case then, back to debate. You have 3 minutes, members. Would anybody like to start the debate? Okay, Councillor Ward, thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to point out a couple of things that Councillor Harron mentioned. He talked about the Schroeder Fund. When you add together the small profit we made on that fund, plus the over £1 million interest that we've gained over the time we've held it, the total return on that was 56%. So I think that was, in hindsight, in retrospect, it was a good investment. In terms of our borrowing, debt or whatever you want to call it, you'll see in the Section 25 report, which I referenced earlier, that actually when you look at that, a huge percentage of that, again, it's something like, I think it was, what was the percentage? Just under 60% relates to the HRA and the borrowing we took out in the settlement back in 2012 to obtain and retain our housing stock. So although it's it's relatively high, it should be seen in that context. So apart from those two things, I think that the rest of this report shows that our strategies are sound, and I'm very pleased with what we've got in this report and its appendices.
Thank you very much. Members, anybody else would like to contribute? Councillor McLaren, a second. Is there anything that you'd like to contribute? Fine. Okay. In which case, then, again, we will move straight to the vote, and I will now ask the Head of Democratic Services to conduct the electronic vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Councillor Beer, can I take your vote verbally, please? Four. That is 27 votes for and 1 abstention. The motion is carried.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. Right. Moving straight on. Item number 11, paper BC 2540, the Strategic Asset Management Plan 2026. And I'm going to invite the lead member for Assets and Investments, Councillor John Wyman, to introduce the report and to move the recommendations. Councillor Wyman, please.
Thank you, Chair. Congratulations from me too on your chairmanship. I'm not quite sure I can be quite as entertaining as Councillor Hurren, but I'll do my best, being in mind that we've got the Ipswich Town Reserve team on display. I'm going to present the Strategic Asset Management Plan for 2026. The purpose of the report is for Council to consider and adopt the updated SAMP 2026 following the original adoption, which some members may remember, back in 2021. The SAMP sets out how the Council's property and assets are managed to support the vision, objectives and goals of the Council and to serve the districts and our communities. I'd like to draw members' attention to page 186, which sets out the portfolio holders sort of forward. If we just skip down through those points, we have a continued commitment to create vibrant, strong local communities. Our land and buildings are very important to the Council in creating a sense of place. Our property assets contribute to creating these resilient and sustainable communities. Our challenge is to ensure we optimise our property assets so they contribute fully to our community's needs and the Council's budgets. This document describes our assets and their management policy and practice. It also provides a framework to ensure we remain both efficient and effective in all the processes we undertake. Our plan includes strategic objectives for these assets having regard to our current plans. As Councillor Ward reminded me this evening, the plan is a living document and we need to be mindful of all the changes, and particularly with the political aspects of the environment that we work within. It's going to be reviewed on a regular basis, reflecting changes in property, holdings and the strategic plans and policy of the Council. Inevitably, it will be an open-ended document with annual reviews and ongoing considerations for assets, small land disposals, etc., which we need to consider appropriate at whatever time that is the case. We delegate these changes to the Director of Property Development and Regeneration, Emily, in consultation with the portfolio holder for property. Any fundamental changes require the plan to be revised and agreed by a full Council meeting.
All the included information and actions in this plan will support the local government review and the transition to the council, the transition of the council to the new unitary authority. I'd like to just draw members through now to page 180 and the specific points that I'd like to sort of focus on. Point 4.10, in order to maintain currency, we propose that the SAMP action plan is regularly updated, which I mentioned before, each financial year to align with the objectives of the council plan and those of its services. Within the plan itself, Appendix A, on page 187, members, I would draw your attention to the key objectives and goals, which I alluded to in my report introduction. We have put a huge amount of effort and energy into our records and the information that we've had to compile over the last 2 years, and I can't overstress how much time our officers have spent doing this. It was a massive exercise. On page 188 at the top, we set out the value of the estate, and it's worthy of note for members just to actually look at what we do have and how that sort of figures in our overall financial plan. For Babergh, we have a portfolio of land and buildings which includes 935 assets with a book value of 28.43 million, of which 911 are general fund units and 24 are housing revenue account units. Of our 911 general fund units, 800 are classified as non-operational assets, which mainly comprise of soft landscape areas, where 454 have an area of less than 100 square metres, which is not a lot. Operational assets account for 18 million, of which 12.6 million relate to our leisure centres. The 12.6 million, in case people are thinking, well, that's quite a bit of money, that's the net book value. I suspect if we had a fire sale, we wouldn't get 12.6 million for them. I draw members' attention to page 190 and the embedded table with a more detailed breakdown of the numbers and values. Finally, I refer members to page 201 and 202, where we set out the capital programme for both our depots and the leisure centres. As probably members will understand, the capital programme for the leisure centres is particularly challenging because it's just a tough job, and Emily manages to pull all those things together for us. I hope this gives a reasonably full flavour for the strategic and asset portfolio. I'm happy to take questions. If I can't answer them, which I probably won't be able to, I'll pass it on to Emily and Holly. So I recommend for adoption recommendations 3.1 and 3.2, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wyman. That's great. Thank you. And do we have a seconder for this paper? Councillor Ward? Excellent. Okay. So we'll move straight into questions. Members. Councillor Clover.
Thank you, Chair. Just on page 190, Councillor Wyman, that you speak about the asset values there. I wonder if you, just for really my own interest, clarify some of the items here. So, investment property underneath the general fund, we've got 2.598 M. Is that Babergh? I've got a number of questions, so shall I give all of them? So this is the first line underneath the general fund, investment property 1. Is that Babergh? Thank you. Then next up is the Tourist Information Centre, and there's one item of that as well, and that's 71,100. And I presume that's Sudbury, is it?
I can't answer that question. Sorry, Councillor.
Okay. Maybe someone can come back to me on that then. Okay. And then finally, just to confirm, on the HRA account, we've got 3.766 M, and that's the actual asset value of all the HRA stock, is it? That's correct. What is it then? Could you just explain?
Could you just, sorry, could you point me in the right direction for the, what page that's on?
Page 190 is the bottom.
Oh, no.
What does that figure?
That's the, sorry, Councillor, but that's the cumulative value of those items, which includes the 24 within the housing revenue account notes. But I can't give you a definitive figure on that. I'll have to get back to you with a written answer.
Well, I wonder if, Emily, might you be able to shine some light for us, if you will?
Thank you. So within the strategic asset management plan, we don't cover the operational assets of the HRA. So we were talking about the council houses, etc. So these are the properties that are either leased out to a third party, or they may be surplus to requirements, or they may be ancillary to any housing use. So it absolutely doesn't include the value of our housing stock, for clarity.
Thank you, Emily. Councillor Over, is that all right? We'll get an answer to your second point as well. Councillor Ward, you indicated, but it's been answered. Well done. Okay, thank you. Councillor Mabry.
Thank you, Councillor Wyman. Also on page 190, don't lose that page, we've got a disused allotment 1. That's my first question. Where is that? Because I'm really surprised to see a disused allotment these days, or allotments.
Councillor, maybe I have absolutely no idea.
I'm sorry, we'll have to come back to you and check.
May I ask the second question?
Please. Yeah.
Thank you. My second question is, there was a lot of talking about grassed areas, like verges and odd little bits, and I think you mentioned, Councillor Wyman, that some of them are very, very small. I actually have heard parishes talk about asking for those verges to come under their jurisdiction. So is it possible for them to be transferred? Are we going to make a policy to do that, or are we not? Does it depend on where they are? What are we doing about that, please? Thank you.
I'll probably get myself into trouble by saying this, but in Capel I've got quite a few similar assets which it's very difficult to differentiate whether they're parish council assets, whether they belong to developers, or whether they're Babergh District Council assets. I think the intention, hope and desire is that we can actually define exactly what these assets actually are, because we've gone through this process of trying to understand exactly where they are, and I think there's no reason at all why we shouldn't consider handing assets over to parish councils where they're quite small locations, simply because from a sort of an insurance liability perspective, it's much easier to have a local community control over it rather than something which we would choose to do.
Thank you. I quite agree with you. Thank you.
And I'd just come back on the allotment asset. I think the allotment asset is in Assington.
Well done. Thank you. Councillor Owen.
I'm over here. Looking at the play areas, you've only got one here. There can't be just one.
Thank you. That's to do with the split between general fund and HRA. The HRA own most of the play areas.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Any other questions? Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Chair. I found this really fascinating. All these unknown places. Councillor Wyman, is it possible if we requested to identify those that are in our own wards? Is that too difficult? Thank you.
There are a lot, and I wouldn't like to overburden Emily and Holly trying to go through all that. I think the ultimate destination is to have a much, much deeper understanding of exactly where these places are And I think also, and I may be wrong, but when we transitioned our records from paper records to the computer system, we haven't got everything particularly on the actual sort of the maps and various things. So I think there's a lot more work to do. I think there's a desire from officers and certainly from myself to actually understand where the assets are so that we do get a better use of the assets, and particularly from a community perspective, that people are able to use them.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Members, any other questions? Councillor Clover.
This is just really for, because it does stand out here, the flood area at Ditch and Grill, 2 items at £15. That would be very useful to know where that is.
Are you making an offer?
Good stuff. Okay. Any other questions, councillors? No? Okay. Thank you for your contribution. Councillor McCraw.
Just a clarification of questions. Would some of the grass area, by any chance, be public open space that was associated with individual planning applications granted over the many years that they've taken place in? Because I'm aware of a lot of these, and they're ignored by most people until somebody tries to fence a bit off. But they are actually part and parcel of our biodiversity, and they are important, and their cash value concerns me slightly less than the fact that that's the green bits around our houses. I think that's what makes the communities look like communities. I would just like to confirm that those are, in fact, included in public open space areas. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor McGraw. I suspect, yes, I think they are. I think the other thing we need to remember also is, and I've had the experience of this now once or twice, where we hold an asset, it could be a grass verge or whatever, and a planning application comes in where someone needs to pass over that asset, there's obviously, dare I suggest, there's a consideration. So we need to be mindful of the considerations where we might want to make use of the asset for a consideration for the council, and not sort of essentially give everything away.
Yeah, and again, yes, please, Councillor McCraw.
Just to follow up on that, can I confirm that having been granted as pieces of public open space is not always big, gross areas like fields and the rest of it. It is literally little patches here and there adjacent to properties. It's just to basically to provide gaps, wildlife corridors, all the rest of it. Could I confirm that these, I understand, are meant to be there in perpetuity, that they should not be considered as assets up for sale? I have had people ask me, for example, if a plot of land next to their house could be purchased by them because they'd like more car parking space. And I had to go back and say, no, that's actually established as public open space forever. Can we have that confirmed, please? Because I think that's important.
Yeah, I was going to say, Emily, thank you.
I think it depends on the individual circumstances. So much as I would love to apply blanket rules to everything, unfortunately we don't have that luxury. So it does depend on the individual circumstances, how we may have acquired that piece of land. We will have acquired the little sections of land in different ways, and it depends on what conditions came with those, with the land being passed to us. We do have a section within the report that does deal with some of those queries in relation to small pieces of land, which might also address some of the concerns that you've raised, Councillor, largely around some of those smaller pieces of land that people would like to purchase for car parking or whatever, but actually there can be a wider community value to that, and that's something that we do always take into consideration.
Thank you, Emily. Okay, members. Any final questions? Nope, in which case we'll move into debate. Would anybody like to add anything to the debate at this point? Councillor Ward?
Only to say that it's a very useful and informative document. It's great that we've got an up-to-date register now of all of our assets, and I think that's going to help us a lot in maintaining and also making decisions on disposal should we wish to do that. I just wanted to clarify for Councillor Clover You'll see in the Section 25 report back when I covered the budget that our HRA stock value is £323 million, and that's set against the borrowing, which is currently about 75 million. So you'll see that that stock value is way in excess of the amount that we borrowed for acquiring the stock.
Well done. Thank you, Councillor Ward. Okay, members, anything else? If not, I will move to the vote. Not seeing a show of hands, in which case I will now ask the Head of Democratic Services to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Councillor Beer. Councillor Davis, Councillor Derek Davis, would you like me to take your vote verbally? Four. That is 27 votes for and 1 against. That motion is carried.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Members, can I ask, can we stick with it? You're doing very well. I know it's a dry old evening this evening, that you're getting through it well. Members, item 12, councillor appointments. We have a request from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for Councillor Mary McLaren to replace Councillor Adrian Osborne. Do we have any other changes to request? If not, then I will ask for a proposer, please, for that change. Councillor Ward, thank you. And I will ask for a seconder. Councillor Wyman, all over the place, thank you very much. And we have nothing else to do there, so I will ask the Head of Democratic Services to conduct the electronic vote for that, please.
Councillors, that vote is now in progress. That is 25 votes for and 1 abstention. That motion is carried.
Right, thank you very much. And we are going to have literally the briefest of pauses while we just change a couple of chairs at the top table. If you can just bear with us a couple of moments, councillors. Would we appreciate the briefest of comfort breaks at this point? We would. I'm getting thumbs up. Right, can we have literally 5 minutes, please, members? Thank you, members. Right, okay, so we're coming to, I think, the last item on the agenda this evening, item number 13, motions on notice. And I would like to invite Councillor Rowland, please, to move his motion. Councillor Rowland, you have 5 minutes in which to deliver. Thank you.
Chair. Okay, so the rising solar farm battery energy storage sites in Suffolk, especially in Babergh over the last few years, become evident. The latest BES proposal at Brantford would make it the largest in Europe. Taken together, this amounts to 2,750 megawatts of storage, involving more than 1,500 lithium battery containers, completely surrounding and adjoining the substation. The risk assessments for each individual plan proposal are based on suppressing one container fire. What if there's an unforeseen incident leading to multiple runaway fires in multiple areas? In Thurrock last year, February last year, there was one faulty cell in one battery in one container. It took 23 fire units, 24 hours on site to contain it. Today, there's still no clarification as to how they are disposing of the water that has contaminated the ground. To put this into context, the Brantford BES will contain approximately 10.1 million cells. What would happen in Brantford? It would seep into the water supply that Ipswich depends on. Fires also create toxic plumes of smoke, which will be given prevailing winds over Suffolk, directly affecting up to 200,000 people in and around Ipswich. Without central ownership and accountability, developers, planners and fire service will continue to apply insufficient risk assessment, quoting regulations which are not fit for purpose, for which such an unusual, unprecedented concentrating of BES and using the Rochdale envelope as a way of bypassing the risk management process. With the BES sites encircling Brantford, contingency and continuity plans even must be based on worst plausible scenarios, not best case assumptions. A large-scale battery fire here would have national consequences, including toxic plumes affecting Ipswich 3 miles away and the potential contamination of the Ipswich aquifer, which the substation itself sits on. Amazingly, there's no supplies to the site. A single track access, no plan how you will contain and safely remove contaminated water used. In suppression, it would take 2,000 litres per minute to suppress a single fire in a container. To reiterate, this is not about not having renewable energy, it's about safe renewable energy. 1,000 plus containers full of potentially dangerous toxic lithium-ion batteries concentrated in one place is not safe. It's way beyond reasonable risk tolerance. The BES site here is not business as usual, it's an extraordinary development, and we, the representatives of our wards, have a duty of care to residents and the community to make clear but proper planning in place. The concerns I express are particularly felt by Birstall, who's the parish council I met with to discuss the matter. It's only 650 metres away from the BES. This is not an argument against renewable energy, it's an argument for doing it safely and within plans to deal with the worst case scenarios of a runaway battery fire. So with this in mind, I'd like to suggest the following: that Babergh has a moratorium on planning and developing the battery storage capacity around national grid substations, pending an in-depth assessment of risks and possible mitigations posed to Ipswich and adjacent communities. Commission a risk assessment of ground pollution from fire suppression to the Ipswich aquifer, Suffolk water supply. To commission a specific assessment of ground pollution from any battery fire to the Suffolk water supply, residents particularly concerned about the danger of the water supply and the site it sits on. And lastly, the Secretary of Energy to address the issues that make clear legislation about BES sites' location and safety requirements that are plausible worst-case scenarios. Any local planning department should be governed by HSE advice and proposed sites, including public consultation around locations before giving the go-ahead. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you, Councillor Rowland. That was absolutely spot on as far as the time goes. Well done. Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Rees. And Councillor Rees, do you wish to speak now or you? Okay, that's great. Right, okay, so members, I'm just going to, one moment, Councillor Saw, I'll be right with you. I'm just going to remind members that because this is a motion on notice, there are no questions. There's no question section. We are straight into debate. So if you wish to craft any questions or any points of clarity into your items of debate, all well and good, because Councillor Rowland will have an opportunity to sum up at the end and can answer those questions at that point. So as long as we are all clear on that, we will get straight into debate. And I'll ask for a speaker. Councillor Saw, you were straight in there. Does that mean you wish to speak?
Yes, please, Chair.
Please.
Thank you. So I'm sure we're all delighted to hear that Councillor Rowland is not against renewable energy. Let's not tell Richard Tice, his party's Shadow Deputy Prime Minister and Shadow Secretary of State for Business, Trade and Energy, who describes renewables as a massive con and trumpets that reform will get rid of net stupid zero. Let me start by saying that the safety of our residents and their communities is the paramount consideration when assessing applications of this nature. Given the amount, given the amount of energy investment in our districts, our planning officers have built up a great
Councillor
store.
Saw, could I just interject? I think we have a point of order. Can we ensure that it is a point of order, Councillor Rees? And would you like to stand for it?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe that it's not really appropriate at this juncture to be laying into party political aspects of any cases to do with what's at hand, which we just seem to be being subjected to a tirade of invective against a political party. I've only got 4.
Okay, well, Councillor Rees, thank you for your point. I'm not entirely sure that that is a point of order as such, because that must address procedural matters. And of course, we are in a political chamber, so I am going to allow it, Councillor Rees. Councillor Saw, could you continue, please?
Can you stop the clock? Right, I should just start again. Let me start by saying that the safety of our residents and their communities is the paramount consideration when assessing applications of this nature. Given the amount of energy investment in our districts, our planning officers have built up a great store of expertise. Our principal planning officer for energy and MSIPs sits on a regional board focused on battery storage developments. The idea that they've not exercised sufficient care and caution on the Bramford application is frankly risible, if not insulting to their professionalism. I should say that this motion does have some factual inaccuracies in it, and I leave those corrections to my fellow councillors. If you design, install or operate a BESS, there is already a legal responsibility to comply with health and safety legislation. In fact, there's a plethora of regulation, from the Health and Safety at Work Act to the Construction Management and Design Regulations to BSI regulations on design and emergency response. The National Fire Chiefs Council has updated guidance on BESS, including a comprehensive risk management process, impact assessments, and an emergency response plan, the provision of a water supply, and minimum distances from the BESS to occupied buildings. Complete combustion of a single BESS unit is considered the reasonable worst-case scenario. Babergh consults Suffolk Fire and Rescue on these applications, and this is what happened at Bramford, as mandated by the NPPG. And it advises applicants to consult Suffolk Fire and Rescue at the pre-app stage. The Council asks for a fire and safety strategy, which includes the National Fire Chief's guidance requirements. We also demand an annual review of safety and an update of that fire strategy. The Department for Energy, Security and Net Zero has also produced guidance on health and safety for energy storage systems, and the Council's assessed applications against this. The probability of a BESS fire is extremely low. The UK's government's Clean Flexibility Roadmap reports a 5-year annual average fire incidence rate of 0.7%
Thank you, Councillor Saw.
for
Thank
BESS
you.
installations,
You've had your 3
lower
minutes.
than 0.8%
Thank you, Councillor Saw.
for wider non-domestic building fires.
Right. Members, can we adhere, please, to the clock that is ticking, please? I've got Councillor Jameson, Councillor Smith, Councillor Wyman, Councillor Dowling. So I've got a lot of people that would like to speak here, and Councillor McCraw and Councillor Ward. So, okay, we'll make a note of everybody. Councillor Jameson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, well, firstly, I fully understand why Councillor Rowland has brought this motion forward. Birstall, for which he is the member, is directly affected by the proposed solar farm, and I know residents of Birstall felt under siege over the last few years. And many of us would share those concerns if new technologies were being built on our own doorsteps. However, when incorrect facts are used, they can unintentionally create alarm. They spread fear among residents who are already worried, and that helps no one. Now, the motion states that last year, during construction at Thurrock, a faulty cell in one battery caught fire, that 23 fire units were on site for 24 hours, and there was still no viable plan to remove toxic contaminated water. Now, we all agree that safety on any building is absolutely paramount, but it's important that we look at what actually happened. Yes, a fire did occur, but evidence indicates that it was most likely caused by an electrical fuel cell during installation, electrical fault, during installation of the cell, and not by a faulty battery cell. And crucially, it was contained within the single battery unit. Now, Essex Fire and Rescue had a pre-agreed defensive firefighting tactics for this exact scenario. They allowed the affected unit to burn out while the neighbouring units were called as a precaution. There was never any risk to local residents, and no health impacts were reported for firefighters who attended. And while 23 appliances may well have been used over the course of 24 hours, there's no indication that more than 2 were ever there at any one time. On the issue of water runoff, it was contained within the site's drainage system, exactly as designed. The operator has confirmed that the water was not contaminated, and it's still used on site, it's still stored on site, ready for reuse if needed. We must absolutely ensure that strict safety policies are in place so residents are protected. But with the risk of a single cell fire estimated at around 1 in 40 million, and with robust fire safety measures built into these sites, we can manage the risks responsibly. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Jameson. Thank you, Councillor Smith.
Thanks, Chair. Like Councillor Jameson, I do sympathise with the concerns raised in this motion. When a large new technology appears on your doorstep, you're going to be concerned about the safety. But according to the fire service, as Councillor Jameson mentioned, there was no contaminated water at Thurrock. So this talk of toxic contaminated water and how it would seep into the water supply, it's just not pertinent. The water runoff at Thurrock was not contaminated, and during and post BESS fire environmental testing to date has shown that water runoff is not contaminated. Emergency water supplies of 228,000 litres are provided on site at Bramford, which can be recirculated to minimise overall usage and potential environmental impact. And, as Councillor Jameson mentioned, the site is designed to contain the water runoff in the event of a fire, so there's no seepage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Wyman next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think we seem to be really missing the point. Really, I think we're missing the point. Councillor Rowland's brought this whole thing forward because he's trying to support his residents. And I know we've all given supportive comments. I've spent 40 years in the risk management business and risk transfer insurance. I've seen vanishingly small risks, which we all alluded to, cause catastrophic situations. And do we really want to be joint councils where something goes wrong and we have some catastrophic fire or some incident where we've discussed this and for almost party political points we're saying no? Well, I think that's completely wrong, and I think we should really take a grip of ourselves and say, why are we here and what are we trying to achieve? Councillor Rowland has brought forward a really good point. I can completely understand the issues he faces with Burstow Parish Council. They're not an easy council to deal with. They're hard to please, but he's doing his job. So I would commend members to support.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wyman. Councillor Dowling.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I had whispering in my ear for some reason.
It happens.
Councillor Wyman is right that this is an important point, but our debate and consideration of it must be based on fact, verifiable fact, not scaremongering. A case in point is in paragraph 6 of the motion. Councillor Rowland claims the council used the Rochdale envelope approach to bypass the risk management process. I'd like to clarify what this term means and how it applies to this case. The Rochdale envelope is a legal term, the product of case law and falling under the Planning Act 2008. It allows an applicant for outline planning permission to cite parameters within which the details of the subsequent full planning application will fall. As the Planning Inspectorate's advice note of July 2018 puts it, the Rochdale envelope assessment approach is an acknowledged way of assessing a proposed development comprising environmental impact assessment where uncertainty exists and necessary flexibility is sought. So in this case, the Rochdale envelope approach is not being used to circumvent safety and risk management because the process demands a full environmental impact assessment. Outline planning permission could not and would not be granted without it. The reason here for adopting the Rochdale envelope is to provide flexibility to choose the best available technology at the time of construction, because technology often runs ahead of regulation and certainly runs faster than the planning system. Rochdale envelope applications require further detailed plans, studies and reports to be produced post-decision in order to discharge relevant conditions, and this allows the councils to continue to control what's being developed on the site. Safety always comes first. It's a critical embedded part of the planning process, and the council has indeed followed that process in this case. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dowling. Now, I know you've got your hand up, Councillor Rowland, but we're not responding at this point. You'll have an opportunity to sum up at the end. A point of clarity. One moment, Councillor Dowling.
Point of clarification is admissible if you finish the
Fine, okay. Point of clarification, Councillor Rowland.
Thank you, Chair. Just on your recent statement on paragraph 6, I don't mention the council use it at all. I say it's central ownership and accountability, developers and planners in the fire service. I'd never mention that the council were using that particular Rochdale envelope. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rowland. Yeah, I'm not going to get into a back and forth about this. We are in debate, all right? So, but thank you for clarifying. Thank you. Councillor McCraw.
Thank you, Chair. Initially, on looking at this seemingly very worthy proposal, I was sort of semi-minded to think that's perfectly reasonable until I looked a little further into it. I think there's a certain danger here of trying to reinvent the wheel. Responsibility, just as a simple search on a search engine, other research engines are available. Responsibility for BESS systems lies primarily with developers, operators and owners who must comply with health and safety legislation. The Health and Safety at Work Act, we all know that, CDM regulations, DSEAR. The key duties are listed. The safety and compliance is listed. This is already covered by regulation, and it's quite an extensive amount of it. Site management responsibilities, fire detection, suppression systems, emergency planning. This is not something that is just done willy-nilly, regardless of any protocols that have occurred. Emergency planning, local fire services are heavily involved in such matters. The local planning authority is heavily involved. When we look at planning approvals, this is already dealt with. This is already covered. The end of life on waste batteries and accumulator regulations of 2009. We are in danger of over-regulating something that's already regulated. We're asking government to do stuff which I have to say from a cursory examination, they appear to be doing already. I would be quite happy to listen to some experts in the field, the NFCC, National Fire Chiefs Council, and other experts, but as far as I can see, this is largely unnecessary and perhaps being done for a bit of virtue signalling, which I don't believe, Councillor, is absolutely necessary. I do have some faith in authorities, particularly the fire authorities. Thank you, Chair.
Well done. Thank you, Councillor McCraw. Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you, Chair. Reading the motion, it does sound alarming, and as others have said, I can't blame local residents being concerned. But looking at the first part of the motion about the storage surrounding Bramford substation, the motion states that there's 2,750 megawatts of storage surrounding the substation involving more than 1,500 battery containers. The reality is that only 650 megawatts of storage is operational or has planning consent. These are Brook Green at 50 megawatts and EDF at 50 megawatts, which are already operational. I believe that Enso Energy, a Solar Plus 50 megawatt BESS, and Cambridge Power at 100 megawatts are in construction. Bramford Storage is 400 megawatts, so 650 megawatts is a long way short of 2,750 megawatts. Lots of numbers there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carruthers. Right, members, well done. Any other contributions at this point? Oh, yeah, we have still got some. Councillor Ward. Sorry, Councillor Davies. Councillor Ward first.
Others have talked about the regulatory framework that protects and ensures that projects such as this are conducted in the right manner, and the implications for planning, whether it's through us as the local planning authority or whether it's through the work that we do as part of NSIP approval. I just want to focus on the location, Bramford. And I know that the issue is that many residents there are very upset and concerned about the development of that site and the use of that as a location for battery energy storage systems. The fact of the matter is, it is the right location for these, and as long as the safety aspects are quite clearly understood and mitigated, then I don't think we've got any alternative but to site them at Bramford. When you look at the importance of Bramford in National Grid, it's such an important node in the structure of the grid, not just now, but also the way that all of the offshore wind farms of the Suffolk coast and the Essex coast are coming into Bramford either directly or via the new East Anglia connection node at Ardley, plus obviously the Norwich to Tilbury route going through Bramford, the Bramford to Twinsted reinforcement. We can see that huge development taking place at Bramford. Scottish Power Renewables have just almost completed building an AC to DC converter to allow their wind farms to come in from offshore through underground DC cables and then to connect to the grid at Bramford via that converter. It is a massive part of our energy infrastructure, and BESS is a necessary part of the renewable programme, and Bramford is unfortunately the right location for that. And I'm convinced and heartened by what I've heard about what's been put in place to ensure that it complies with all of the necessary legislation. And yes, there are the occasional fires at some of these, perhaps, but very few, very infrequent. But as long as we can control that and the fire brigade is able to respond to that, then really, the motion has a lot of emotional content to it, but we've got to look at the practicalities of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Councillor Davis, Sally Davis, thank you.
Thank you. I take Councillor Wyman's point about sticking up for residents, as we all do, but there are ways of doing it. And I'm not going to apologise for making this party political, but we know that these are the tactics of the Reform Party. You shout out falsehoods very loudly, you create panic and fear, and you hope that nobody bothers to listen to the facts when they actually come out. So I believe that is what is happening here. And I'm sure we can arrange for the residents of Birstall to have a discussion with the people who actually know the facts, with the fire authorities, with our planners, with the water authorities. I'm sure that we can come to Birstall and talk about it, rather than bring a motion that is awash with contaminated facts into this chamber, and so that we have to rebut over and over again the falsehoods. On the subject of a moratorium, we do not have the power to place a moratorium. If we were to place a moratorium, it would be in contravention of the National Planning Policy Framework and our joint local plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Right, so before I come to Councillor Rees, don't feel obligated, Councillor Rees, but before I come to you, is there any more contributions to the debate? Okay. Councillor Rees, do you wish to speak?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chairman. Reform certainly doesn't have a monopoly on factual inaccuracies in this chamber or in others, nor on virtue signalling. Thank you, Councillor Wyman, for your contribution about risk management. Let's think about, not necessarily in chronological order, Bhopal, 4 Mile Island, Chernobyl, Fukushima, a recent incident somewhere in North America, I'm afraid, sorry, the name escapes me, and these are all in most of our living memories, but the one that isn't, of course, is the Titanic. I'm glad it was a Liberal Democrat. Thank you, Councillor Wyman. I'm glad it was a Liberal Democrat on that side of the chamber who did have the guts to mention the posturing of the Greens on this occasion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Rees. Right, okay, so just one moment. That's okay, Councillor Rowland. So I'm going to invite you now to sum up and close the debate. You have 3 minutes in which to do so, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points to close off, really. First of all, it's never about reform. All these figures were supplied to me by Birstall Parish Council. The amount is the final amount of containers that will be done at the end of this, because I noticed you didn't mention Clearstone, who are the major developers at the moment. They have been working with Clearstone. I've had emails from Clearstone on this very motion, and again, they've looked at it from a developer's point of view. The only thing I will close off with is that I've done this for the residents of my wards. No other reason. That's the only reason I stood in the election last year, because I want to help people that I represent. But I will leave this. The Department for Energy Security Net Zero Guidance on Health and Safety for Energy Storage Systems states the following. It should be emphasised, what is presented within this document is not a prescriptive checklist of activities. It is the responsibility of the overall duty holder, typically the owner, the operator, employer of the asset, to apply guidance to their specific project, comply with relevant laws, and to take into account relevant standards. What we're asking for is it to be defined. Yes, we know there's health and safety executive and the health and safety law and everything else that you guys have mentioned. But there's no definitive, this is the worst case scenario. If this happens, what do we do and how can we prevent it? We've got all the Googles that you want. Like you say, there are other search engines. So we can go and find this stuff out, but we can also look at it from blinkered vision of that's the worst that's going to happen. Thank you, Councillor Wyman, for saying this is about the residents. Nothing more, nothing less. Because if something happens at one of these sites, not just at Birstall, but around Suffolk and Cambridgeshire, which is another one that I've had, can we honestly sit here and say, oh, well, we talked about it, we've done it. We've left it to what the government tell us to do, which leaves it in the hands of the developers themselves. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowland. Right, members, a hearty and fulsome debate there this evening, so you now have an opportunity to have your say on that, and I will now ask the Assistant Manager of Governance to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, members. That vote is now in progress.
Just before we...
Councillor McCraw, may I?
I accidentally logged out. I'd like to vote against the motion.
Against the motion.
Thank you.
Councillor McLaren, may I take your vote verbally? Thank you. Councillor Sally Davis?
Councillor Davis?
Councillor Davis, may I?
Sorry, doing something. I vote against it.
Against.
Councillor Davis, Helen Davis?
Apologies, I managed to hit the wrong button. Can you clear my vote?
I don't think we can we?
We can't. Excuse me.
Because I've done 4 on all the other previous ones. I wanted to be against.
Like to be against. So Councillor...
Oh, goodness me, members. It's been a very long evening, I understand, members. But is there anybody else that would like to change their votes at this stage? Right, members. Just reset the whole thing. Yeah. Members, can we just have a bit of calm, please? We're going to reset the vote. We're just going to do it again for everybody. All right. Well, we can take those that have got their laptops open. If you can make your vote on your laptops that are open, we'll take the rest verbally. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Please vote. Thank you. Councillor McLaren? Against. Councillor Hendry? Councillor Plum? Councillor Owen? Councillor None? Sorry. Against. Councillor Dowling? Sorry?
Against.
Against. Councillor Parker? Sorry, Councillor Parker? Sorry.
I'm here. For.
For. Councillor McLaren, may I just have your vote again, please?
Abstention.
Abstention. Sorry, members, for taking this long. So we got 7 votes for, 16 votes against, and 1 abstention. So the motion is lost.
Right, thank you very much. And no need to apologise. This is what happens when we pack our laptops away early, members. So I will thank all of you members this evening for your forbearance. It's been a long old night tonight, but thank you for all your contributions. The next meeting is on Tuesday, the 24th of March at 2026. And at 7:45, I declare this meeting closed. Thank you.